Now that rookie minicamp is over, it's time to judge the entire Patriots offseason. That's where we start on this episode of Locked On Patriots.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Patriots fans? I'm your host, Nick Cattles, born and raised in New England, your New England Patriots expert, host of the Everything Pats podcast on YouTube, co-host of the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles, and also a sports talk show host veteran. On today's show, an important question is asked by a local writer and the UDFA. That's gained a lot of attention. But first, let's grade this Pats offseason. We appreciate you joining the show, making us your first listen, and for being an everydayer. The Locked On Patriots podcast is a proud partner of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so rookie minicamp, it's over. It's done with. We've moved on. And because of that, it just feels like it's the perfect time to grade this offseason. And I'm talking about the entire offseason, soup to nuts, pillar to post. That's what we're doing. And when I look at the Patriots offseason, some of you might say, oh, Nick's got rose-colored glasses on. Nick thinks that this was just an unbelievable offseason. He found no flaws. No. But I will tell you that this offseason for me gets no lower than an A-. No lower than an A-. And let's start with the coaching staff, because a lot of times when people discuss the offseason, they talk about free agency and the draft, and we'll get to those. But you actually have to start with the coaching staff, because as we know, for the second straight offseason, things began for the Patriots by naming a new head coach. And the Mike Vrabel hire, at the time, in real time, I said it was the best hire they could make. It was the hire that I fought for. I didn't want Ben Johnson. I wanted Mike Vrabel. And what I had said at the time, I feel even stronger about right now. When you hire Mike Vrabel, you are immediately, just like that, a serious program. You are a serious football program when you hire somebody like Mike Vrabel to be a head coach, because he knows exactly what he has to do. He has built programs before. He built the program in Tennessee. He reset the program a couple of times. That's what he's done. He walks into the room with a command of what should be done and how it should be done. And when you hire somebody like Mike Vrabel, the reputation of your organization, the reputation of your franchise, if it's going through some bad times like it obviously was here in New England, that can flip very quickly. Mike Vrabel was the best available head coach out there. And to me, there's no doubt about that. I don't even think it's a debate. I like Ben Johnson a lot. I think he could do a really good job in Chicago. I think he's a smart guy. But when you look at this hiring class, Mike Vrabel was above and beyond the best candidate. And the teams told you that, because before the Patriots got the final confirmation that Vrabel was going to be signed, sealed, and delivered, teams circled back in an effort, a 23rd hour effort to try to hire Mike Vrabel. The Jets were desperate for Vrabel. Reportedly, Chicago was interested in Mike Vrabel. So when you look at this coaching staff, it begins with Coach Vrabel. And then you go to the rest of this coaching staff. You look at the offensive coordinator in Josh McDaniels. Compare that to last year in Alex Van Pelt. Josh McDaniels is one of the most heralded offensive minds in football. I know that not everybody loves the guy. He's not universally respected for some reason. I respect him. I think he's a really good offensive coordinator. Then you go to the defensive coordinator, Terrell Williams, who Mike Giardi just recently wrote over the weekend that people around the league felt like Williams is one of the best assistants in all of football, and he deserves, at this point, he has earned the right to run a defense. So Terrell Williams, very respected within the game. Offensive line, Doug Marrone. We all know about what he has done. He's a very respected offensive line coach. Jeremy Springer, who stayed as special teams coordinator. Look at how he flipped things. He flipped the script from 23 to 24. One of the only positive things about that team last year was that the special teams were better. This is a coaching staff that is loaded with experience. I don't know how you would have graded this coaching staff any less than an A, frankly, given the options that they had. I think they hit a home run with this staff. Now, will it work? We have to see how they get along. We have to see how they communicate, if the chemistry is there. But just like when we talk about the team, we talk about the roster, everything's on paper. On paper right now, in May, this coaching staff looks like a home run. Then you got to free agency. We got through the initial excitement of Mike Vrabel, the hiring. We got through the excitement of Josh McDaniels and the rest of the staff being filled out. And then we got to free agency. And what we saw in free agency was a number of upgrades. You obviously upgraded at right tackle. Morgan Moses is a steady veteran. He is a leader. He is 1,000 times better than anything you had at right tackle last year. I think that you upgraded at inside linebacker. I think Robert Spillane, especially in this specific defense, is a better fit. I think he's a better overall football player than Juwan Bentley, and I like Bentley a lot. But I think you upgraded there. Outside cornerback, too. We all love Jonathan Jones and what he brought to this football team for years. Carlton Davis is better. He's a better outside corner. He has proven that throughout his career. He has a higher ceiling as a player. So you upgraded at outside corner, too, opposite of Christian Gonzalez. Then you also, by the way, you landed the best defensive free agent on the market in Milton Williams. He was the best defensive player on the market. He was the most heralded. He got paid, I believe, the most money. So you landed the prize on that side of the football of free agency. You really reset your culture. You brought a bunch of guys in that get it and have showed, it's documented, that they get it. They understand leadership. They understand work ethic. They understand being a professional. And you brought in some guys that have Super Bowl rings on the resume. Williams has a Super Bowl ring. Carlton Davis with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady going back years ago has a Super Bowl ring. Just played on Detroit, who obviously has not won a championship, but they've been one of the best teams in football the past couple of years. So you not only brought in the culture and the leadership that you wanted, and you upgraded in a bunch of different spots, but you also brought in guys who have been there and done that. And then we got to the draft, and we just talked about the draft for the last couple of weeks. We all know how we feel about the draft. The idea that you truly controlled the board. Doesn't feel like you, quote unquote, reached often. Looks like you got a couple of steals in Farmer and Swinson as to where they got drafted and when people thought they would be drafted. You manipulated the board with a couple of trades that I thought were very, very smart. You drafted a starting left tackle, and whether or not he's going to be average or spectacular, we don't know, but he's going to be an upgrade at left tackle versus what you've had. And if he is going to be average to above average, he will end up being a good left tackle in the NFL, which is very hard to find. So you drafted a starting left tackle. You added to your explosiveness by drafting Travion Henderson and Kyle Williams, two guys that bring that juice that you just didn't have on that side of the football last year. A couple of guys who could make a pretty big difference within the Josh McDaniels offense. And then you addressed some other needs. You built some young depth at certain positions. Interior defensive line with, again, the aforementioned Farmer. Nice to have. Now you can slot him behind Barmore and Williams, and we'll see what happens with Keon White, whether he's going to play on the edge or on the inside. If he plays on the inside, you have Farmer in there as well. So you've got four younger, talented interior defensive linemen. You added to the edge with Braden Swinson. It was in the 5th round, but you added to the edge. You added to your safety room and maybe the big nickel position by drafting Craig Woodson. Shoot, you even went out and added at a couple of positions that people got upset at you for adding by drafting these guys, but you added a kicker. You added a long snapper. You also added a potential right tackle, swing tackle, and Marcus Bryant in the 7th round. So when you look at all of this, the head coach hire, filling out the coaching staff, the free agency period, and the draft that we just saw, I cannot give this offseason anything lower than an A-. Maybe some of you want to battle and say a B+. If you want to tell me there's a couple of points here, 3 or 4 point difference, 2 or 3 point difference, I'm not going to haggle with you. But for me, I'm giving them an A-. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't an A. It wasn't an A+. I'm going to give them an A-. And I think that's why there's a lot of excitement around this football team right now, because the people know, the fans know, they've done a really good job. A local writer has a significant question. We will address that question next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. And here's the thing, FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. What would it look like to combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds? Imagine if you're watching and Jason Tatum has 4 or 5 rebounds. You want to pop in and look at the live prop bets. Maybe you want to go over 10 rebounds for Jason Tatum because he's off to a great start in the first quarter. That's the kind of thing that you can do. How could a $200 bonus in bets add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? I mean, you tell me. Imagine winning $200 in bonus bets because you hit on that first $5 bet. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get that $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's all be honest with each other here. The pass rush stunk last season. I know. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we just did have a very positive segment, the last segment. But I am here to tell you something that many of you already know because you watched this team in 2024. The pass rush stunk in 2024. I've got some numbers for you, some analytics, just in case you think the eye test is really failing you here. The Patriots were 23rd in the NFL in pass rush win rate, a metric that is used by ESPN. So they were in the bottom third of the league in pass rush win rate. They were dead last in the NFL in sacks, number 32. They were 30th in pressures, so the third least amount of pressures in football. They were 29th in pressure percentage. When I say they stunk, I mean they stunk. One of the worst pass rushes in football. You could argue they had the worst pass rush in football. And Chad Graff at The Athletic wrote about the pass rush in 2025. Here's what he wrote recently. And what was a bit of a surprise, the Patriots did not add an edge rusher in the draft until the 5th round when they chose Braden Swinson. Clearly, they don't view edge rusher as the same level of need as many of us speculated. I'm a little skeptical of how the Patriots will get to the quarterback from the outside. The interior duo of Christian Barmore and Milton Williams should be great at pushing the pocket, but you'd ideally like someone coming around the corner to meet in the backfield, and that's where I think the Patriots could struggle. I am here to tell Chad Graff, and I am here to tell all of you, the Patriots pass rush will 100% improve in 2025. Let's start here. It's tough not to improve. You were that bad. There's only one way to go, and that is to go up. But this pass rush will improve. And it's not just because they were so bad last year and you can only really go up, which I guess you could argue because offensively they've been terrible and they haven't really gone. You get the point. I think the Patriots clearly addressed the pass rush. I think they clearly addressed edge rusher this offseason. They go out and they aggressively get the Harold Landry deal done. Before free agency even begins, they get it done. They wrap them up. Then they go out and they get Chiasson. Chiasson is brought in. It's a 1-year deal, short money, not overspending, certainly for a player like that. But Chiasson had a very good finish to his season last year. And I've read a lot of different things about Chiasson, and I've read a lot of different writers and some local guys. I know Greg Bedard has been on this. According to people that he has spoken to, they say, look, Chiasson could end up being a steal. He was a first-round talent, Things did not go great at the beginning of his career, but last season it looked like he was starting to figure some things out. So they add Landry, they add Chiasson. Of course, they drafted, as Chad Graff wrote, they draft Swinson. But you also look at what else they've done. Keion White is still here. Anthony Jennings is still here. As of now, Jelani Tavai is still here. And during an offseason when so many defensive players and captains were let go, or they walked into free agency and the Patriots said, we're not very interested, I think it's telling that we have not heard anything about Keion White being gone. We haven't heard anything about Anthony Jennings being gone. And to the surprise of some, we really haven't heard much about Jelani Tavai being gone. I still think he's on the bubble big time. But, I mean, if those guys are going to play edge, if you've got those three guys on the edge, you've got Landry, Chiasson, and Swinson, and then White, Jennings, Tavai, you've got 6 dudes who can play the edge. Now, they all have different strengths. But how many edge players do you want? I don't really have a beef with how the Patriots approach the draft at that position because, yes, I would have loved to draft somebody in the 3rd round or 4th round, but it really didn't matter because you drafted Swinson, who was seen by most people as a 2nd or 3rd round talent. Pretty much everybody across the board that I read, that I watched, that I listened to, told me that Swinson was a top 100 player in this draft. His talent would tell you that. So you still got an edge who was seen as a top 100 guy talent-wise. I also think that Graff is understating the impact of having Christian Barmore and Milton Williams in the middle. It's the old school thought process of, yeah, but you need those guys on the edge to get to the quarterback. That certainly helps, and defensive end is one of the most critical positions in football. However, if you've noticed something over the past few years that I've noticed, you will understand what I'm putting down. Williams and Barmore, such a huge impact because of the rush on the interior. And if you've noticed how much teams are paying offensive guards and centers nowadays, the Mike Onwenu contract last offseason, I was wrong. When he signed that deal, I said they're paying him like a tackle. But no, the Patriots were actually ahead of the curve a bit by giving Onwenu the contract that they gave him. Because when you look at the guards in the league and good guards, we're talking about making 18, 19, 20 million, 20 plus million a year. Now, why is that? It's because teams are more concerned now than ever about the interior defensive pass rush. Milton Williams and Christian Barmore will be a nightmare on Sundays for offensive lines. And that will create cleanup sacks. Guys on the edge getting home, not because they're always winning their one-on-ones, but because Williams and Barmore are creating a nightmare for the interior offensive line of the opposition, which is forcing the quarterback out of the pocket. And what do you know? He's running right into you. I also think you can look at guys like Robert Spillane, who's going to help the pass rush. He's not an edge rusher, but he's going to help the pass rush. Michael France of SI wrote this about Spillane last June of 24. At the end of the 23 season, Spillane was named the 10th most valuable linebacker by Pro Football Focus. Among all linebackers in the league, Spillane had the 3rd best pass rush grade of 87.1. Evan Lazar wrote that Spillane logged 13 total pressures as an interior blitzer last season, profiling as a fiery off-ball linebacker with an explosive downhill trigger. Robert Spillane gets to the quarterback. He's aggressive. He's a really good blitzer on the inside. So just put all of it together. Milton Williams, Christian Barmore on the interior of that defensive line, Spillane screaming downhill with a blitz. Simulated pressures, making offenses believe that you're going to rush a defensive lineman, but then all of a sudden that defensive lineman drops back in coverage and you instead send somebody like Spillane, or you send a safety, or you send a corner. Mike Vrabel's defenses, they run simulated pressures. And we know that Mike Vrabel, he had a stated goal when he was introduced as the Patriots head coach. He said that he wants to impact, he wants to affect the quarterback. He knows you've got to get after the quarterback. And whether he's aggressive or selectively aggressive, they're going to make that a priority. And one more thing, when you have cornerbacks like Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis, and you can play man coverage on the outside, and quarterbacks can't get rid of the football quickly because both of your outside corners are very good at man press coverage. When you have that situation playing out, that also helps your pass rush because guess what? Guys aren't getting open quickly, which allows you to get to the quarterback. To just look at the edge rusher and say that this team is not going to pass rush because you're not in love with the edge rushers that they have, you're missing the bigger picture. You're missing the totality of a pass rush. There's one specific undrafted free agent who's receiving a ton of attention. That's coming up next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Efton Chism. Efton Chism is a popular name in the UDFA class that the Patriots recently signed. And now we have even more context behind the addition of Efton Chism. Mike Reese wrote about Chism over the weekend, and here's what he wrote in part at ESPN.com. 6 NFL teams, 6, devoted one of their 30 allotted visits to Chism leading into the draft. So 6 NFL teams. Before getting into the draft, you've got your top 30 visits. 6 teams had Chism in for a visit. Reese writes, the Patriots weren't one of them, but Coach Vrabel personally called Chism. So Vrabel felt that Chism was important enough to pick up the phone and call him, to call a UDFA. If that doesn't make you believe the Patriots were serious about Chism, his contract should tell you they were very serious about Efton Chism because Chism's 3-year contract, according to Reese, includes $234,000 in guaranteed base salary along, that's not it, he also got a $25,000 signing bonus. It is the richest deal among the Patriots' 16-member undrafted class and includes more in guarantees than the team's 7th-round draft picks. Efton Chism is getting more guaranteed money than any of the 7th-round picks that the Patriots made. That's significant interest, folks. Reese writes, one reason for the lucrative deal is that the Patriots found themselves in a competitive bidding battle with other teams, which sources familiar with the discussion say included the Broncos, as Coach Sean Payton made a strong pitch to woo Chism to Denver. Let's start with Sean Payton, number 1. If Sean Payton's interested in Efton Chism, I'm interested in Efton Chism. Look at Payton's history as a head coach and what he did with that offense in New Orleans and what he's doing with that offense in Denver. My guy knows wide receivers. Let's just look at the Saints. The legitimate offensive mind of Sean Payton when he was with New Orleans. When you look at the Saints and their long lineage of wide receivers that were some of the best receivers in the league during their time. I'm sure you're thinking of one guy immediately. How about Marcus Colston? Sean Payton guy. How about Michael Thomas? Sean Payton guy. How about Lance Moore? Sean Payton guy. How about old friend Brandon Cooks? Sean Payton guy. Sean Payton has proven during his time in the league that he can identify wide receivers. He can develop wide receivers. He gets production out of that position from all different types of guys. Marcus Colston was more of a positional guy, right? He was going to be able to box out and bother you and get contested catches, use his big body. He was more of positional and possession guy. You look at Lance Moore, kind of a mix in between. You look at Brandon Cooks, who was the vertical threat, not a big dude, but a vertical threat. So if Sean Payton was interested in Efton Chism, that's good news. Now let's look at something else. When you are drafting in the late rounds, and we talked about this a little bit with Marcus Bryant, when you're drafting in the late rounds, the picks that you're making and UDFAs, you're looking for, I believe, one of two things. You're looking for specific traits, and if you can get somebody with an elite trait, somehow, some way in the 7th round, 6th round, UDFA, they might have one elite trait, but if you can get that guy in town, that's a good job. So you're looking at specific traits, you're looking at top-end traits, elite traits, whatever, but you're also looking for fit. Some guys might not have the top end traits, and most guys, when you get to the 6th, 7th round and the UDFAs, they certainly won't have the elite traits. So you're looking for fit. And when you think about fit, you think about wide receiver, you think about Josh McDaniels. The first thing that I think about is the shifty wide receiver in the slot, the Julian Edelmans of the world doing their thing. And McDaniels has the history with those slot guys. And when you look at Efton Chisum and his testing, they kind of go hand in hand with what you envision a McDaniels offense and at that position. Back to Mike Reese, who does great work. We all know Reese. Fantastic. He wrote about Chisum's testing. Chisum tested with a 4.71 40-yard dash in the pre-draft process. Obviously, 4.71 is slow. It is slow for a wide receiver. 4.71, you are not putting that on a banner. You are not running around giving high fives when you run a 4.71 as a wideout. But devil's in the details. Chisum ran a 4.71 40, but he had high-ranking times in the 3-cone drill, short shuttle, and 10-yard split, which, as Reese writes, reflects Chisum's ability to change directions and accelerate quickly. Change directions, accelerate quickly. Sounds familiar. Now, Edelman is a better athlete than Chisum. He's faster than Chisum. Let's not play the Julian Edelman game. I'm just talking about envisioning that role within this Patriots offense. And Reese writes that during Friday's rookie minicamp practice, Chisum caught multiple passes. He worked on shallow option routes, sounds familiar, and was among those players staying after practice. The short area quickness. I'm not telling you that Chisum's going to make the team. I do think it's going to be very difficult for him to make the team. If he makes the team, Patriots will be thrilled because that means he had an unbelievable camp. He had a great preseason. He did what they hoped that he would do when they handed him over $260,000 in his pocket. But my question is, what do you do with Pop Douglas? If you're going to bring Efton Chisum into camp and he's going to make the team, that's fine. But that likely means he leapfrogged Pop. And I think Pop could be a good fit for this McDaniels offense. And we've seen Pop. We've seen the type of dynamic plays that he could put out there on the field when he's healthy and he's given the opportunity. So I find it hard to believe that Chisum will leapfrog Pop Douglas. I just don't see it. You're not putting Pop on the outside, not with his size, the concussion history. You're just not doing it. Now, could Efton Chisum play the Z position in this offense? Maybe, but he has even more competition at the Z receiver. I mean, the Patriots are loaded with Z receivers. Stephon Diggs could play Z. Kendrick Bourne could play Z. Jalen Polk is a Z. You could say that Kayshon Boutte could play Z. So it's the numbers game, and it's what do you do with Pop Douglas? I mean, it's a good problem to have if Chisum plays well enough and he shows out and you feel like he could make the team. I mean, I guess that's great news because you have another useful weapon for your team. And if he's pushing Pop Douglas, that should make Pop even better. But I just find it hard to believe that Pop would be gone. I don't see it. It doesn't mean that Chisum and Pop can't both make the team. They certainly could. But now you're kind of messing with the numbers because they don't have the versatility that some of the other guys have. Seems like Efton Chisum would be a very specific fit for this team. And if the worst case scenario is he just pushes Pop, that's good. I wouldn't totally write off the idea that he makes the team, but I think it's going to be very difficult for him to do so. That wraps up this edition of Locked On Patriots. On tomorrow's show, the versatility of said wide receiver room. I want to get into that. I want to dig a little deeper. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. Reach out to me on Twitter at Nick C Radio. Don't forget to throw a comment on the YouTube channel. Always helps us. Thank you for making Locked On Patriots your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. Of course, the draft's over. Now we're kind of focused on the future. And hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, my friends, and I will see you tomorrow.